Okay. Nathan, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read the story or provide the story of Christian Null. His story is also in our newsletter for May. So most of it I will sort of riff on just a little bit. A couple parts I'm going to actually have to quote directly because, well, you'll find out. So anyway, Christian was a Revolutionary War soldier, and he was born in 1770. And not too many of our soldiers were born in 1770 because the war kind of got started in earnest when he was just, I would say he was in kindergarten, but I don't really think they had that then. Um, he was one of 10 children and born, Henry, his dad, was born in 1735. Uh, his oldest brother, Jacob, fought and then died in the Revolutionary War, December 29th, 1777. I don't know why or what caused his death. Maybe that will come clear sometime, but it's clear that he died from the documents we found. Now, family lore shows that Jacob's death was motivated or was motivation for Christian to join the Revolutionary Army as soon as he was able to, which was age 12. Um, and he did serve three enlistments under several different uh, Colonel Alexander Lowry and a couple of other officers. Um, his work did entitle him to some land bounty rights, but he went ahead and sold those to Colonel Ludington uh, and got some cash for it. And then he paid cash for the plot that he eventually took. But the rest of his story, beyond just being a Revolutionary War veteran, uh, is, to my mind, every bit as fascinating. Um, The story is documented by a woman called Aunt Sarah, and she wrote what I'm going to read in a moment in 1915. Christian was her grandfather. Um, so, quoting Aunt Sarah, in 1792, great-grandfather, that would be Henry, gave Christian, her grandfather, $500. It's a lot of money back then, and told him to travel until he found a better farming country than Virginia. And they were, at the time, I keep stepping aside from this, in the area near Harrisonburg. So, uh, Christian went to a town on the Monongahela River where the immigrants loaded their flatboats to float down the Ohio River and to settle on the Kentucky shore. When he arrived at the town, a number of families were loading a boat to go to Kentucky, and he asked if he could go along and that he would help them work. But they refused as he was a stranger. Their last excuse was that they had no room for his horse, and he could not go without it. But the woman spoke up and said, "Hey, we can make room for the horse and bring him on board." So good for the women. The men on the flatboat knew very little about how to manage it, and grandfather was on but about 3 days until he had the helm of the boat. I have no idea how he knew how to handle a boat. One day, the horses got to fighting and kicked the board loose at the water's edge. And let me see, the men on the flatboard didn't know what to do about it. The water started pouring in, the women screamed, and the men were frightened. When grandfather saw the board was not quite knocked off the pins, he let himself down over the side of the boat and told a man to hand him an axe. With the first lick, he knocked it back on the pins. He pounded the board back in place and told the men to caulk the seam and bail out the water. So I guess that probably made him a certified member of that crew. He went with the boat as far as Maysville, Kentucky, and there he left and then stopped to visit with some friends. He stayed there for several years, working his way And then when the Indians were defeated by General Wayne and it was safe to go to Ohio, grandfather went there and traveled over part of the country and bought the land near Springboro, Warren County, Ohio. That's a little bit south of Dayton. So he cleared some land, built a log house, and possibly in partnership with Charles Null, and sent word to his father that he had a home for him. Father sent word back that said, I'm not going to come to Ohio unless Christian would come back to Virginia, help him sell out, and move to Ohio. So grandfather rode back to Virginia, helped his father sell out, loaded the wagons, started for the Ohio home. After some weeks of travel, they arrived safely at the new home. His brother George died in Virginia, and his wife and children stayed there. Two sisters, a Mrs. Kazar and a Mrs. Hanspiger, remained in Virginia. One sister, Mrs. Hoffman, and the other brothers went to Ohio. And this is, again, the Aunt Sarah saying, I write this from hearing my father tell about the Null family. So this is clearly family lore. How much of it has been embellished a little bit and how much of it is straight fact, I don't know. Wasn't there. I mean, Christian is technically my first cousin, but it's about 5 or 6 times removed. So, I have been to Springboro, and I have visited the cabin. And if you look at the newsletter, the picture that I took when I was in Springboro will show the cabin. It was a two-story cabin. It was pretty nice. Um, it was interesting that a golf course was built up around that cabin, and the golf course, of course, wanted it taken down because it was in their way. But the local folks in Springboro liked their history, and from what I was told by them, they did a little sit-in until they could get it declared a historical monument, and it stands there today thanks to their persistence in, maintaining the cabin. So that's a pretty good story, but the story goes on. Um, After the war, he married Catherine Bone of Old Town, Allegheny County, Maryland. They raised all 12 of their children in their Clear Creek home. Christian died on 24 February 1832 and was first buried in the United Brethren Cemetery on land that belonged to the Null family. After Christian's death, Catherine and the children moved westward. He remained in that cemetery until March 29th, 1989, not very long ago, when he was moved to the Dayton National Cemetery. Uh, the Sons of the American Revolution sponsored his disinterment and reburial with honors. So he now has a lovely gravestone in Section E, Row 1, Site 5 of the National Cemetery in Dayton, and is probably the only Civil War or Revolutionary War veteran in that cemetery. And if you go to the newsletter sometime, you will see the cabin, and you'll see his original gravestone, which is looking a little worse for wear. And you'll see the lovely one that's in the National Cemetery looking just like a standard National Cemetery gravestone that you would find at any National Cemetery. So that's Christian's story. I'm sure that there are many more descendant stories if he had 12 children, and I don't really have all of those, but it's sort of interesting. So anyway, that's Christian.
Okay, thank you very much. Round of applause. Appreciate that.
I can barely hear you, Nathan, but thank you for that.
Round of applause for Art on that story, and we're definitely interested in more stories like that. We're continuing our America 250 celebration by profiling any intersection that we have with history, American history with your ancestors. So profiling those connections, Revolutionary, Civil War, World War I, whatever it might be. So please do think about how your ancestors interact with history, and send them in to me, send them to Art, send them to Mike Mason, and we'll get them in the newsletter. Appreciate you sharing that, Art. A couple of other things before we kick off, too, if that's all right. We've got our Saturday event is also about the frontier, just like what we heard from Art. And we'll be hearing from Jim Anderson talking about revolution in the backcountry, Daniel Boone and the fight for independence on the frontier. And we'll be talking more about the frontier in that as well. There will also be a celebration for the end of the year and special recognition for volunteers. So please come out to the fire hall this Saturday, 10 a.m., and be a part of that. It's going to be a great program. I hope that you can all make it. Um, and with that, there is an ongoing need for volunteers. Many of those are profiled on the website, but the newsletter team is one of those pieces that we need. One of the others that we might need is special events volunteers, the SIG leaders for genetics, AI, and tech, uh, and and technology SIG, our New England SIG. So we're always accepting team members for the education team, our membership team, our hospitality team, etc. And there will be handouts. They are available on the website in the members area. And the last thing that I have is there will be a feedback form because we like to collect information about our speakers and our programs that we provide. So please watch for the feedback form. It's going to be in the chat towards the end of this lecture and Q&A session. But those are some of the announcements that I have very quickly. And I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker, if that's all right. So we turn to the program, and with pleasure, I get to introduce to you Michele LeTourneur. Michele is, I'm reading from her bio, family history enthusiast and avid researcher who grew up with the rare privilege of knowing 6 of her 8 great-grandparents and all 4 grandparents, fostering a deep connection to her family's history from an early age. In 2020, she began conducting in-depth genealogical research, applying systemic methods to trace her ancestral lines. She looks forward to collaborating with fellow researchers, sharing discoveries, and contributing to the collective knowledge of the genealogy community. One thing that I'd like to mention as well is she started researching in 2020, but she's really gotten involved. She's already cultivating expertise, as you can tell. She's presenting to us on archiving, and she's also jumped into FXGS. I think you can definitely say that she's made a big impact already. She volunteers with our education team. She helps out a lot. She also leads our archive SIG, and she's going to be sharing a wealth of knowledge that she's obtained in that role and even before that. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you Michele LeTourneur, who's going to be talking to us about archiving. Michele.
Thanks, everyone. Now I got to figure out how to share my presentation. So let me find that. All right, and I think you can see it, correct?
That's good.
Can everyone see it? Okay. Yeah. So thanks for the intro. Part of that was because I really don't have any credentials. I'm basically like you guys. I didn't go to school for this. It's something that I just really, really appreciate. And so one of the things that I got into when I got into genealogy is probably like many of you has happened. All of a sudden, everybody started giving me everything. So I started amassing a ton of photos and books and binders, and I just my house doesn't really look like this photo, but it does a lot of times feel like this photo. So I started doing what I needed to do was figure out how to learn how to preserve these things. And before I forget, there is a handout. It is 15 pages long. I apologize for the length of it, but don't see it as a handout as much as it maybe see it as a booklet. So that's definitely on the website. And if you can't find it, you can let us know and we can email it to you. This presentation will probably go about an hour, so I apologize in advance. I'm going to try to talk fast but clear, and then make sure that we have some time for questions at the end. It is being recorded, so if you have to drop off, then you can find it online and watch the part that you missed. But one thing I want to make sure, I'm not an archivist, I'm not a preservationist, I'm a family historian. So you have to do what's right for you. This is my experience. Definitely, I hope that I'm giving you more of a lesson, kind of a game plan. But if you have something that's really, really specialized and important, like lace or whatever, that we're not really covering that in this presentation. We're trying to cover mostly photos and documents and the things that most of us have a lot of. And more importantly, what I'm trying to give you is a process, not so much what folder to put it in, although we are going to talk about that, what folder to put it in, what kind of plastic to use, but more really how to attack it. Because I think a lot of people that I've talked to just seem overwhelmed with what they have. So this is really the process that I have determined. This works for me. I'm not saying that this might work for you. This might be too much for you, but this is basically the process that I want to talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is the difference between preservation and conservation. Preservation is what we're doing. We're trying to basically take this photo and make sure that it will be able to be seen in 100 years. Conservationists try, like archivists, to preserve exactly what they were given in exactly that format in the exact same way. So we're really doing more preservation, and that's going to come up because I'm going to give you license to do with your things the way that you want to do them with, right? And that'll come into play when we talk in a few slides. So the first step that you need to consider is gather all your stuff. I don't know if any of you know the Marie Kondo method. She was really popular, I want to say, a decade ago. She's a person where if you tap a book, like to wake it up to see if it sparks joy, right? One of the things that she was really good at is just the idea of gathering everything in your space all at once, right? So grab everything, every photograph that you have in every album, documents, certificates, diaries, scrapbooks, Bibles, anything, right? Anything that you have. Ask other people, look at your basement, go through your house systematically, try to put everything all together at one time if you can, right? This is kind of the overall thought of what you should do, not necessarily what people can do. Then once you have all these things organized, try to keep them in a protected space, in a large clean table away from water if you can, in a space that where you can leave it undisturbed if you can. I can't, so I do these things kind of more in waves. I don't have an archiving room that I can just kind of leave on its own, but the idea of you gathering everything all at once is a really good idea. And then more importantly, make sure that you're putting down it on a clean surface, and then you keep it away from a lot of the, strong sunlight and things that could possibly damage it. One of the first things you should do is sort first, read and research later. In our archive SIG, we're going through things and people are starting to look at letters and they're starting to read them and they're starting to talk about them, which is fantastic, but you're going to get distracted. So what you really need to do is sort everything first. Yep, you see your great-grandfather, that's amazing, put it in the pile. You see your great-grandmother, that's great, put it in the pile. Like, you're going to really want to get distracted on looking at everything. Don't do that, right? Sort first, you can read and research later. I think you should sort by surname, put it in certain piles, put it in folders, however you want to do it. You can label it with sticky notes. Don't put the sticky note on the pile, put it on the near the pile. And then you can start then going through and identifying hazards like newspaper print, anything moldy, anything damaged. You should separate newspapers and cardboard from all these things. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but newspapers and cardboard will certainly degrade photographs and other documents quicker. So you're really going to want to identify any hazards like mold and bugs and staples and things like that that might rust and degrade things quickly. And then as you start getting into it, you're going to pick your group, whatever you're going to start with, and then you can really start going through the process. So this is really the gather round. When to use gloves. Gloves is a little bit controversial in the archive community. Some people are like, never use gloves. Some people are always use gloves. Kind of the more current thought right now is to use gloves if you tend to do what I'm doing right now. If you tend to touch your hair a lot, use gloves. If you lick your fingers when when you try to advance pages, maybe use gloves. If you have sweaty hands, maybe use gloves. So gloves, when I put gloves on, I never touch my hair. I don't like the way it feels. So by wearing gloves, it makes me not do the things that I'm not supposed to do. When you are handling photographs, unless you're going to handle a photograph perfectly, because if you touch it, if you put your thumbprint on it, that thumbprint, those oils could transfer over time and degrade the photograph. So a lot of times people are saying use gloves when you're handling photographs, and then also use gloves when you're handling paintings and metal objects. But a lot of preservationists say don't use gloves with paper documents because your tactile, your sensation kind of diminishes. So you might rip it and not know it. So use clean, dry hands, and then always use masks if you see anything with a lot of mold, and if you see anything with like bug parts. If you see any remnants of bugs, definitely use masks. If you see anything, we're not really going to talk about extreme mold, but if you do see insects and pests, you want to make sure that you're getting anything that they've possibly eaten out of your house. So if it's in a cardboard box and you're seeing all this kind of stuff, transfer everything that's not moldy into one place and anything that is moldy into a different place and throw away that container. Same thing, insects and pests and mold, everything. And then you're going to have to figure out how to treat that object that has mold on it or has insects or pests separately. Right now, the current thought is that mold, you want to let it air dry in a ventilated space. Some people swear by putting it in unscented kitty litter, or use those desiccant packets that you're always getting in a lot of stuff, and you put the object that has mold in it in a container resting on top of unscented kitty litter or in the desiccant packets, put the lid on, and then see whether or not that mold kind of comes out into the desiccant. If you need to, place it outside in strong sun when there's no chance of rain, so that it might deactivate the mold, and then you might be able to brush off all the mold. That's really all we're going to talk about here. If you've got anything really intense, I do have a link in the handout of where you can go in the National Archives to handle something that's got a significant amount of mold. So that's kind of your gathering process, right? You're gathering everything together. Then now you're going to start looking at what you have, right? So this is where this photograph is the perfect example of why I'm saying we're preservationists, not archivists. This is a box that I got from my aunt these are from my great-grandparents. It's got postcards in it. It had lots of rolled up photographs. It had some documents in it. It was a hodgepodge of things. An archivist would see this, document it, preserve it, but keep it in this kind of order, in this kind of collection. As a home preservationist, I get to decide what I want to do with it. So I get to decide I may not keep the postcards. I don't know yet, but I'm going to take these postcards and put them off to the side. I'm going to take these photographs and try to unroll them. We're going to talk about that later. I'm going to take these documents and store it separately. So even though I received this box the way it was, I'm not keeping it in this order. And that's what basically this slide talks about. You get to decide, are you going to keep its original order or not? So I think you should have a save or not to save strategy as you're going through it. Again, you've gathered everything and now you've picked your pile, right? You've picked your pile. It's your, father's pile or whatever it is, and you're going to decide to go through it. Start looking at it. Am I definitely going to toss this? You get to decide what that is. We'll talk a little bit about that. Are you going to digitize it and preserve it? And then are you going to digitize it and then toss it? Like, is it something that you eventually want to keep? Or if it's something that it's important to you, but it's not necessary for you to keep the actual object. Current thought is if the item tells a story, is really visually interesting, is rare, unusual, a legal or financial obligation, or provides evidence of some kind, right? Definitely keep it. If it's a printout of something you received via email, you don't need to keep it, right? If it's books or newspapers or magazines, if they're online already, you don't need to keep it. If it's a document that you received but now is online, you get to decide whether you want to keep it or not. If now it's online, a lot of the New York birth, marriage, and death certificates from 100 years ago are all online now. Do you need to keep it? That's up to you. So, and then you would toss it if it has no context, you don't really know what it is, it's a duplicate, it's in really bad shape, or it even can't be read, or it's just irrelevant to what you have, like maybe postcards, unsigned, unwritten postcards. The exception is, I do think you should keep every single photo that you have, even if it's in really bad condition, because AI, as we know, is just improving drastically minute by minute. So there are things that you might be able to do in a year from now that pulls out details in a photo that is damaged that you would otherwise not really be able to see right now with your naked eye. Then you want to really figure out what you're going to buy, how are you going to store these things, right? See what you have. I have, a ton of photographs that are all 5x7, and I have a few that are 4x6, so on and so forth, right? Take a look and assess what you have. Figure out what you can afford. Are you going to buy all archival stuff now, or do you need to do things in stages? I do have some sources later of some archival sources that you can take a look at, but you need to do what you can do as you can do it, right? So you can wait till Black Friday sales and buy a bunch of things. If you were planning on donating your things to an archive, right? You have a collection of, I don't know, anything that you think you might gonna want to send to the DAR, right? Find out how the DAR organizes their things so that you can specifically preserve your things in the format that they organize, that they save, so that you can just hand it to them and they don't have to undo stuff, if you can, right? And then some of the things that as you start getting into descriptions of terms, you'll see the words buffered and unbuffered. And you're generally going to want to use buffered for paper, newspapers, most photographs, ceramics, and you're going to want to use unbuffered for basically things that are protein based, right? That are silk, wool, parchment, things like that. We're going to talk a little bit more about where that comes into play later, but I wanted to make sure that you understood when you see these terms what they meant. Paper products, when you start looking at them, should be acid-free and lignin-free. Lignin is a chemical that is added to a lot of paper. You want to make sure that it doesn't have this, that it's free of harmful chemicals. It doesn't have any adhesives at all or has safe adhesives. And any paper products that you're getting need to be large enough for the items to lay flat inside them, right? So if you've got a 8.5, if you have a 10 by 14 piece of paper, don't put it in an 8.5 by 11 folder, right? Things like that. And then we're gonna talk a little about cotton interleaving tissue and when you use them, but generally you use them to wrap items. You use it in between pages when you don't want them to rub. They absorb acid, and so cotton interleaving tissue is really important. On the left, I'm saying these things because archival is not an industry regulated term, right? So someone may say this is archival. Great. That doesn't mean anything, right? That means natural, right? Natural is not an industry regulated term. Natural can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So you can look for certain reputable companies that say they're archival, but just make sure if you're going to Home Depot or you're going to, Michael's or something like that, it might say archival, but it may not be. So make sure it is these things instead of worrying about its archival, just make sure it says acid-free and lignin-free. When you are still using paper storage, this is kind of like the good, better, best, but I had more tiers than good, better, best. So I went fair, good, better, best, and supreme. So fair is basically binders with plastic sleeves, right? This will work for you now. If this is something that all you can do, you want to go to Staples and buy all those plastic sleeves, which aren't great, but that's what you have. You've got hundreds of plastic sleeves, okay, and binders. Start putting things in that to organize, fine. The better way is to do a slipcase binder. Binders when you've got a binder and that has like a little house that slips into. That's basically a slipcase binder, and it's better because it's away from dust and sunlight. What's even better than that are folders that are lignin-free, acid-free, that are within a file cabinet because then it's really away from dust and light. What's better than that is folders within an archival box. And then if you've got flat boxes for large items, and what's even better than that is everything goes in folders in flat boxes. The problem is sometimes when it's going in a folder in a box that you're storing the thing on its side is that over time it might curl, which is why the best thing that you could do is to store something in a binder that's flat. For plastic, worst thing you could do are those PVC sleeves that you get from Staples that are the $10 for 100. They will off gas, they will degrade whatever you're putting in them over time. A better option is polyethylene. An even better option is polypropylene. And the best option is polyester. You don't really need to use polyester. Polyester is really recommended if you've got a letter that has fallen apart, that's got lots of little fragments, because polyester sleeves have slight static to them. So instead of having to tape or glue together your document, you can place it in the sleeve and the natural static of the polyester will keep it together. But because it has static, don't use it for artwork. So don't use it for a charcoal drawing. Don't use it for a pastel drawing because the static will pull the loose media off the backing. So definitely don't use it for that. Again, you're assessing, what am I going to be doing with these things, right? So I have tons of photographs. Okay, so if you have a ton of photographs that you think is going to be brought out at every Thanksgiving, at every baby christening, at every organization, you might want to get a binder like this that you can put the photos in that are, PAT approved plastic. It's in a slipcase because that way people can touch the outside plastic and it won't damage the photographs. If you think no one's ever going to really check out these photographs except maybe once a year, once every 5 years, then you really want to put them in sleeves and in binders or sleeves or in boxes. And then if you've got a ton of photos, you might have over 100 or 1,000 or 2,000, then you might want to consider shoebox style boxes. And then you can put the really delicate photos in a plastic sleeve in that box. Again, you're still accessing. So consider building a home archivist toolkit. I have mine's just a Chinese food container, right? I've got my pencil in here. I've got a pen if I need to mark on the back of anything glossy. We'll talk about why you may or may not want to do that. A soft brush that has never been used. So I just bought a makeup brush. It's never been used. You could use instead of blowing on the object or using your hand to wipe off dirt, you're going to use a makeup brush. A micro spatula. This is a micro spatula. You use this instead of a staple remover. Don't use these. These tear, right? You don't want to use these. You want to use more of a micro spatula to remove staples in any metal objects. And I keep it in the sleeve just because I don't want to get it dirty. You've got gloves. And then one thing that's going to come real in handy, we're going to talk about this, is this dry cleaning soot sponge. And I have a link in the handout to an archivist who's cleaning a document with this sponge. Then what's optional is whether or not you want to have a thermometer, you want to have a bowl blower to remove dust instead of blowing on yourself, or using a cloth, plastic spatula if you need to fold things, desiccant packets, and then unwaxed, unflavored dental floss, which I thought was a bit of a gimmick. And then I actually used it last month during our archive SIG. I had this photograph that was stuck to the back of a album, and I used the unflavored, unwaxed dental floss to remove it, and it worked like a charm. I was completely shocked. So we've talked about gathering, we've talked about assessing, and now we're talking about preparing, right? What are you going to do? So this is a picture of my grandfather. This was his military enlistment photograph. And it came in that box that I showed you that was really rolled up. So over the course of 6 months, I've been unrolling it a half an inch at a time because I didn't want to unroll it all at once and have it crack. So I made sure I used clean, dry hands. I unfolded it when I could. I flattened it when I could. You should use interleaving tissue and weights, but I don't have a lot of money. So you could see what I used here is I used paper and glass bottles to weigh the photograph down as I unrolled it. I don't have weights. I finally now have interleaving tissue, but I was just using Japanese washi paper, which doesn't have a lot of additives in it. So, and I'm slowly unrolling it over time. If you have letters, keep the letters with the envelopes, keep them together, but remove the letter from the envelope. The envelope has adhesives in it that could degrade over time the letter that's inside. But the envelope has information on it, has postmark information, has an address. Janet talked about in her DNA that it might actually have like saliva on it from the person that closed the envelope. We might be able to extract DNA someday. That's a little creepy. for me, but it's still possible. But definitely remove the letter from the envelope. You want to keep them together. We'll talk about how you keep them together, but you keep them together-ish, but not together. And then only use archival tape in extreme cases. I did talk about using polyester sleeves that have that static in it, so you don't have to tape things together, because generally you really don't want to, you don't want to do something that can't be undone, right? Preservationist mindset is don't do anything now that can't be undone later. And tape really can't be undone. So that's why you really don't want to use it unless you absolutely have to. With photographs, use clean, dry hands or gloves. Remember, if you're that kind of person who touches their hair or licks a lot, because you don't want to touch the actual surface of the photograph. As you can see with the image on the right, you never want to force open rolled photographs because it could crack over time. So you want to be gentle with it, and you want to unroll it section at a time. Photograph albums. Definitely don't do what I did and take everything apart before you document everything in its entirety. So every page before you take it apart, if you have to take it apart, especially if it's in those 70s, 80s magnetic albums or the ones that have adhesive in them, they are really degrading photographs. I have photographs that from my parents in those static adhesive albums that look worse than photographs that I was given that are 100 years old. So if you've got them, if you got albums, if you have photographs in those albums, they really are doing a number on those photographs. So, but take a picture of the pages as they are before you take anything apart. You really want to document what is there in case it tells a story, in case it is in chronological order, in case there's some sort of notation, right? You want to document any writing, if there's any labels. Definitely do this. Don't do as I did. Do as I say. Open up all of those photographs and make sure none of them are blurry before you take everything apart. So verify the scans or photos are clear. And then if you've been coming, if you, for those of us who've been going to the archive SIG, they've been seeing me basically take every photograph out of an old frame with the cardboard backing. So I'm taking out every frame every photo I have out of the frames, because that cardboard, like I said, is bad. It's got a lot of acid in it that is going to degrade those photographs. So, so you definitely photograph albums, you're going to want to like undo them unless they're already archival. If they're already archival, great. If they're not archival photograph albums, then you're going to want to recreate it. And then diaries, Bibles, or books, you want to use a book cradle. Basically this is just a piece, obviously, but what you don't want to do is force a book open like this, right? You want to build, a stack of books together where you're kind of basically creating the book cradle so that it opens up kind of naturally where it wants to be. You don't want to force it open like this. So you certainly don't want to force it open like this and scan it, right? So a book cradle, you can buy them, or you can just do a stack of books on one side, a stack of book on the other side. You put the book in the middle and you just kind of naturally let it open up to where it wants to be. You might be able to slightly open the pages like this with clean, dry hands and then photograph it, right? And you're documenting it because you want to know what's in it. When you see archivists, when they turn pages, they don't grab the page by this and then flip it like really aggressively. They kind of take their hand behind it and they gingerly kind of open it like that. So you want to treat these books with, a lot of kindness. And then these books you want to store flat in boxes whenever possible. If you store them like this, they might over time kind of bend and warp. So you want to store, especially those precious books, as much on their back as possible. Never reglue or retape items that have fallen out. Like we've mentioned before, you never want to really do something that can't be undone. And then you definitely want to consider possibly removing newspapers. Again, they have a lot of acid, anything with metal in them, because they might rust over time. And then scrapbooks. Scrapbooks are tough, right? Because you want to keep them the way they are. But the problem is, and I use this picture on purpose, all this stuff in a scrapbook is going to really degrade those photographs over time, right? And bug parts, flowers may attract bugs. So it's something that you really kind of have to worry about. So you should really, when you can, keep them intact whenever possible whenever you can. But unless absolutely necessary, you're going to want to document it. You're going to want to take it apart and you're going to want to recreate it in an archival way, especially if it's falling apart or it's degrading, right? If it's, you definitely want to have to recreate it. If it works the way it is right now and there's nothing in it that's really hazardous that you think is going to degrade over time, keep it the way it is. But that's something that you're going to have to make a call on. And then you're going to remove any metal fasteners, any rubber bands, grommets, stray pins, twine, anything with either gloves, your hands, or that micro spatula that you could see on the left, that little micro spatula, which is this guy right here. And you're going to want to remove staples, by the way, from the back, not the front. So where the staple has its curved part, the little curved part, that's the part that you want to undo. You don't want to take the staple out from where the flat part is. And then let's say that staples from the back only. You're going to want to remove brittle tape if you can, any unknown plastics, bookmarks, flowers, things like that. I have a wedding program with a pressed flower inside it from my great grandmother's wedding. So I took that pressed flower and I put it in a plastic sleeve, and then I put this plastic sleeve back in the program, right? So I still am keeping that flower because it was important, but I'm not keeping it in the program itself because it's actually has actually transferred and bleached certain parts of the program from where it was being pressed upon it. If you do have some stuck documents, you can temporarily store them in the freezer for about 15 minutes and to reduce moisture. And then when they come out, they might unstick. I haven't tried that yet, but I did see someone do that online. And it was really cool. So you're still preparing your documents here. So you're going to lay down your documents completely flat. You're going to use clean, dry hands. You're going to stabilize. So you got a large piece of paper here. Maybe you're going to stabilize with clean hands in the middle. And then this is the soot sponge. And this is only if it's really dirty. I'm doing this right now for my great grandfather's elementary school certificate. It didn't look dirty, but it was really dirty. So I have another sponge, this one, one that's been opened where I cut a little piece, and I've been slowly dragging this little piece of this sponge over this document, and dirt's coming off. So surprisingly enough, you may think that it's actually not dirty, and it might be. Don't use this sponge at all with pencil marks. It will erase pencil marks. So it's only really to clean dirt. Don't use it to clean writing. And then, like everything I've been saying before, once you're starting to put these in folders, right? Don't write on the object if you can. Write on the folder. If you have to write on it, write on the back. If you have to write on it on the back, write on it, in a small, like on much of the margins as you can. Don't write it in the middle of the photograph, or don't write in the middle of the folder, right? You're going to want to write anything you can, so on the side. So when you do start labeling these folders, write on the folder, not the documents themselves. And then don't use any new fasteners. Don't use new tape. Don't use new glue. Try not to use any labels. So that was the gathering, assessing, preparing, and now we're digitizing. I don't want to get into the weeds about digitizing. I feel like we could talk about digital file management and storage forever, but you can organize, if you're going to start digitizing any of these things, which I highly recommend you do. Floods happen, fires happen, people unfortunately die and didn't leave a really good description of what they have, so boxes get thrown away. So I am highly recommending to everybody to digitize anything that's of importance, right? Yes, keep it, but digitize it and share it as best as you can with everyone else. Do not just keep it for yourself, right? So how do you organize this? This is up to you, right? This is a little bit of my junk drawer, right? You can see on the right side kind of how I organize things. When things have been documented, they go in the folder labeled documentation. When they haven't really been filed yet, they're kind of just nesting out in the nether sphere, right? So that's my system, right? I organize just by all one big documentation. You may decide you want to do it by surnames, right? You may want to do it by decade. You get to decide however you want to organize your information. All I think you should do is organize it in a way that other people can figure it out without you telling them how to figure it out. So if you look at my organization, right, you see that I organize by date, by what it is, and by the name. A lot of people think that that's dumb. They think you should do name, then date, then what it is. Great. Do whatever works for you. Digitizing photographs, again, this is something that we could kind of talk about for a whole nother hour, which we don't want to. You want to scan at 300 to 600 dots per inch, and you want to save all of your main copies as a TIFF, which keeps it uncompressed. When you do share it, when you want to put it on Ancestry, you want to put it on Family Search, then you can put a copy of it as a JPEG, which compresses it. So every single time a JPEG is copied and pasted and copied and pasted, is compressing it and compressing it and compressing it. So it's making it more and more blurry over time, which is why you always want to keep a good copy as your TIFF. If you are going to display something, right? You might want to scan it at a high rate and then save it as a TIFF, but for the most part, 300 to 600 dots per inch should do what you need to do. And then if you're digitizing slides and negatives, you're going to want to really make it as high as a DPI as possible. You also want to save it as a TIFF. And then if you're digitizing books, Bibles, scrapbooks, do what you can with a camera and a tripod or a steady hand or a book scanner. But again, you don't want to force those books open. You want to document it as best as you can. If you don't have a scanner, borrow one. Somebody in your life probably has one. The Memory Depot at the Fairfax County Public Library, also at the Fairfax City location, has a bunch of scanners. You have almost everybody's got a smartphone, so there's definitely ways that you can digitize what you have. If you do have movies, right, I put a slide in here. I don't want to talk about it too much. It's more, there's same information in the handout, but the same thing. If you're doing main copies, you're going to want to save it one way. If you're sharing it, you're going to want to save it another way. And then file naming. Boy, there's a lot of stuff online about file naming. This is a quick slide. In the handout, I have a much more kind of lengthy example, right? But you're going to want to keep your file name short and consistent. You're going to want to use hyphens or underscores. You're not going to want to use spaces when possible. I use spaces. This is before I knew better. You're going to want to use letters of the Latin alphabet. You're going to want to avoid punctuation other than the normal ones like dot, dash. But again, try not to use spaces. I didn't know better. And then you're going to want to end with your file extension. Is it a JPEG? Is it a TIFF? Is it a PDF? And then you can name it however you want. It can be name first, can be place first, can be date first. I obviously have date first. Not a lot of people like it that way, but I'm doing what I want to do because it's mine. And then digital restoration or modifications, right? A lot of AI is doing this stuff great, which is fantastic. We're going to discuss this in the archive SIG about kind of using AI for digital restoration or modification. But if you are going to do so and then you're going to share, I highly recommend you creating a side-by-side restoration image. You can see what I did here, what I received on the left, and what I did with it on the right, or my left, my right. And then below, I wrote a caption of what I did. So that is what went up on Ancestry and Family Search, so that someone very clearly won't see the image on the right and think that it's original. You're going to want to create visible captioning or labeling if you do share certain photographs. So this is from the LeTourneur side on the Isle of Jersey. This is my, captioning of who I think the people were, and then, and all my information up there. And so that's also what went up on Ancestry. And it's all one file together so that it's really clear that this text went with this photograph. Okay, so now we're getting into actual documentation. This is going to get in the weeds, so I'm not really going to talk about this too much, but this is basically like once you now know what you have, how are you going to organize it and then record what you have, right? Are you just going to basically give it to other people with, we don't know who this is, we don't know the surname, it's just a bunch of photographs? Like, how are you going to document this so that if someone gets these things from you, they know what's inside? Right? You can create a main inventory log. That may not be your thing. It may be something you might want to consider. There's just in the interest of time, I'm going to keep on advancing it, but this is kind of basically a large organization of what you have. But then you might want to create inventory sheets that go with the actual thing, right? So you're going to want to explain what's in it so that people know where you got it from. It's basically the source citation, right? And so I have an example here on the right of the box I was given. So I wrote what it was, where I got it from, uh, the location of it, the history of it, any notes about it. Is it inventoried? Did I put it, that's my system. Did I put it in the Mac family tree? Did I upload it to Ancestry, whatever? But basically how I got it. Now, eventually, I'm not keeping it this way, but this is how I received it. So that's kind of a source citation for this box of stuff. If I was going to keep it as this box of stuff. And then you're going to want to put in your source citation, everything you can. Again, interest of time, I'm going to keep on going. A lot of this will not be new to all of you. And then I think personally that anything that is for someone that is not living, I am putting up on Ancestry and Family Search. I am not gatekeeping any of this stuff. Did I pay for a certificate? Yes. Am I still putting on Ancestry? Yes. Yes, I paid for it. I'm not going to be like, well, I pay for it. Someone else shouldn't have it. I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it in case something ever happens to my computer. I'm going to share it in case something ever happens to me. I'm going to share it in case, I don't know, my room floods, right? So I'm putting these things on Ancestry and Family Search. I think you should. You don't want to, that's fine. But that I think is part of making sure that your legacy is continuing on beyond you, right? That you are putting this information as much as you can out there. As long as you don't put any personal information. It's not on anybody that's still alive, and you know all those things. Okay, so now we're finally getting to, okay, Michele, great. You told me all these things. I gathered, I assessed, I prepared, I digitized, I documented. Okay, how am I storing these things? Right, okay. So when you do label, right, when you have a folder in a box, be clear and consistent, right? Make sure if you have terrible handwriting, try not to have terrible handwriting. Have someone else write whatever you need to do. Like you need to make it legible for other people, right? So you want to title these folders with a description of what's inside. You want to include dates. You want to include what's in its side. You can put an inventory sheet in there. What's the surname, right? Spell out full words. Abbreviations make sense to you. They may not make sense to everyone else. So if you have room, spell it all out and print clearly so people can read it for years to come. If you are storing paper documents, right, and you are storing them in a folder, it is typically suggested that it's one folder per ancestor or couple, right? So you might want to have one folder for your grandparents, or you might want to have one folder for your maternal grandfather and one folder for your maternal grandmother. And you can photocopy certain information if you need to cross-reference, like a marriage certificate, but and just make sure you photocopy it on archival paper. If they're very, very delicate things, then you may want to put interleaving tissue in between those delicate things to prevent any rubbing, any migration of acid, right? So you've got, if they're regular pieces of paper, so to speak, you might be able to put, just stack them up together. But if you've got some really precious documents in there, you might want to put them in a plastic sleeve, or like I said, you might want to put interleaving tissue in between them to prevent rubbing, right? You really want to think about how these things are going to be sitting in this folder that's going to be sitting in a box, or these things that are sitting in a folder that's sitting in a flat box, right? If they're super valuable, you may want to store them in their own folder, in their own sleeve, separately, right? They're really, I know Janet's got a really, really old, I want to say tin type photograph that is going to require its kind of own storage, not separately, like it's going into like, for Brig, but you want to make sure that you're kind of really keeping it separate. And then, this is where I talked about envelopes at the very end. The letter that was inside the envelope, right? You might want to put that envelope in a protective sleeve because it's got glue in it. And then in a separate sleeve, you've got the letter. And you're still storing them together, but they're not rubbing against each other. So the information is still contained together, but they're stored separately so that they don't degrade each other. Same thing goes for brittle items. Really, you want to just basically think about how you're preserving this in a folder. If you're storing diaries, books, Bibles, scrapbooks, Interleaving tissue. So interleaving tissue is just big pieces of tissue paper, but it's archival, right? It doesn't have any acid in it. So you can cut it to size and you can put it in between each individual page should you need to for anything that is really delicate. Regular books can just be wrapped with interleaving tissue and put in a box. You don't really need to do the interleaving tissue for every single leaf unless you might have something really delicate on this one page, and so you want to put some tissue on top. You don't want to put a book in a big box that then moves around a lot. So you may want to use these board stiffeners. They're basically kind of like little cardboard blocks that more or less keep books within boxes kind of still so they don't move. Or you can just use interleaving tissue that's kind of bunched up and surrounded the book within the box so that the book doesn't move a lot. And then I did provide you a link if you really have something that's super precious and how you want to store it. And you may want to include take a photograph of the book and put that on the top of the box, on the outside of the box, on the top, so that you don't always have to open up and be like, oh, that's what it is. You can see then the photograph on the box, so you don't have to constantly open it up because you can't remember what's in it. If you're storing loose photographs, then you can store them in unique and special photos in sleeves and then in boxes. Or if you've got some large photographs like I do, you're going to want to store them in large photograph boxes to prevent curling. So you're going to want to put down the photograph, a piece of interleaving tissue, then another photograph, then a piece of interleaving tissue. But you're going to want to make sure that these photographs are that they lay flat. If they curl, then they're not ready to go in that box. You're going to want to make sure that these photographs lay super flat. Any document, any photograph already lays flat before you put them in their final resting place, right? So if they're still curling, then they're not ready to be stored. So you're going to want to put, if you do have curling photographs that are still just a slight curl, then you're going to want to put them on a surface, put down a piece of interleaving tissue, and then put boxes on top or books on top to flatten them before you put them in the box. So boxes, the good, better, best. The good is boxes with lids. Better is clamshell boxes that open up. So clamshell box is basically when it's it basically the box kind of right goes within something, and then the best is a drop front box is what you see here, which allows you to kind of open it up without having to kind of dig your hands on the sides. So that's kind of a good, better, best situation. And then negatives and film, you're going to want to store them specifically for negatives and film. And then they do recommend that if you have any negatives that are foxed or damaged, that you store them separately from other negatives because somehow that it can transfer. I don't know enough about that, but I did read about that, so I wanted to pass that information on to you. And then if you're storing newspaper print, I consider you maybe not storing it. A lot of newspapers have already been digitized, so check first. If it has been digitized, I don't think you should keep it, but that's up to you. If you do want to keep it, store it in a plastic sleeve, especially made for newsprint. Put in some tissue in there to absorb the acid, and then make sure you store those newsprint documents separate from everybody else. And then if you're researching anything other than what we've talked about, that's beyond today. And so I gave you a link in the handout, and it's also in this presentation. And then second to last, how are you going to store it, right? I recommend you put family charts at the beginning of all binders and boxes so that whoever gets these after you know how this system relates to the entire family. If you're going to do inventory sheets, make sure the labels match. If the binders are, store the binders flat if you can, ideally on their side. Make sure that they don't move around a lot, and don't overstuff. Don't put in a ton of folders in a box that it's really, really overstuffed. You want to make sure that it has a little bit of air and a little bit of movement in the actual box, right? And then where do you put that box? Do not store it in an unfinished attic, a garage, or basement. You want to make sure if you're comfortable, right? If you're comfortable 60 to 70, then your objects will be comfortable. Your humidity, you wanted to keep it not high humidity. You don't want to kind of create a moldy situation. You want to store it off the floor if possible because of water damage. You want to put it in a closet where it's not going to be or somewhere where it's dark and not subject to light. Some people do, they put it under their bed, which is fine. I would consider you putting it in a plastic bin with then no lid. So at least it's not creating a warm, moist environment. And then why are you going to go through all this work about digitizing if you're not going to back up what you've digitized? So briefly, there's a 3-2-1 backup rule. So all I'm going to say is you should have your computer, that's your first place, and then you should have two other places that you store your information. The two other places is an external hard drive. So it's one of these external hard drives here. So that may be next to your computer, but it's still not your computer. So again, computer's number one, and external hard drive's number two, and then something in the cloud is number three. Highly recommend, we can get in the weeds about this, but what's the point of you scanning all this stuff and keep it on your computer? Because computers fail, right? And then also highly recommended that you may have a photograph in your house of your great-grandparents, but if it's the original and it's sitting on the wall in the sunlight, it's degrading. So I highly recommend you taking that down, you doing a high-quality scan, you put the scan up in the frame, and you keep the original photo protected. Lastly, okay, you do all this work, don't forget to check on your closet. If you keep everything in your closet, check on it from time to time. Set a yearly reminder. Do something on your calendar to remind you to go check on it to make sure that something's happening. Replace or dry out, to reuse your desiccant packs. Spot check your digitized files. Just occasionally go back and open up certain files. If you can't open them, then something's happened with your computer. Did you get new software? Do you have a new operating system? Whatever. You want to make sure that you're testing for digital obsolescence. If you, I don't know, used to have Excel and now you don't have Excel, how are you going to open up these Excel files? And things like that, right? JPEG, TIFFs, right? And then you might want to migrate your file formats if needed. So I don't know, let's say in 10 years, no one knows what a TIFF file is anymore. You might need to resave all of your stuff with the new file format that is non-TIFF, right? And then long-term planning, if you're going to give this to someone, you need to talk to that person now, right? So that they know that they're getting it. We're not going to go into that because that's been covered and come up in some other presentations before, but leave instructions in your will and contact your receiving archives now so that you can be prepared to give it to them. Your key takeaways is this is not a marathon, this is a sprint. Please sort first. You can get into the weeds later. Don't do anything that can't be undone, tape, glue, staples, things like that. I think you should document everything because you need to know what you have and other people need to know what you have. And then please share it because I think it's important that other people have what they need for the future. And I hope everyone could see all that because I couldn't see you at all. But I hope, and I know I talked really fast and I'm so sorry it was going long. And you've got a 15-page handout. Does anybody have any questions? Shockingly none.
I have a question about the 15-page handout.
Yes.
So if I go to the Fairfax Genealogy Society, do I need to be a member to find it?
If I'm right now, let's see, I can.
I'm there and I'm looking and I don't.
Well, I'm just going to share right now.
If you put it in the chat.
If that's okay, I'm going to share. I'm going to share it right now in the chat. And it's there.
All right, great.
So the handout is the booklet's there. Anyway, was that your question?
Yep, that was my question.
Excellent. Okay, Amy?
Yes, I put this in the chat, but I'll just say it. Assuming we want to keep the envelopes and the letters together, but in separate sleeves. Once they're in the sleeves, separate sleeves, can we somehow like keep the sleeves together, not just loose, but maybe tie a string or something around them?
Like you could use this is a bad example, but this is a plastic coated paper clip
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
do not recommend I do not recommend this, but they have entirely plastic clips,
Okay.
right? Where there's no metal.
Yeah.
You could use that as long as it's kind of an inert plastic that are connecting the two sleeves together. But if this, if you've got the envelope and then the letter, you know, sleeve one, sleeve two in a folder, I don't think you really need to worry about it separating, but if you need to, definitely you can clip them with plastic clips. Just don't use metal.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Janet.
This was a terrific presentation. Wow, so much there and so much I have to do.
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually thinking about some home movies that I took back in like 2006,
Hmm.
2005 of my kids and when they were really little in preschool and they were on a camcorder and
Yep.
now I have these weird tapes that I don't think are
Yep.
what do I do with these?
Right.
Do you have any companies you are know about or
Oh,
how do you transfer these?
okay. So that's a great question, right? Because I have my wedding video on VHS. I don't have a VHS player.
Yeah.
Like, so what, like, what do I do with it? So the Memory Depot at Fairfax County Public Library does have some film to digital something. Now, I don't remember what that is. That could be 8 millimeter, that could be VHS. You're gonna have to take a look at it. There
Okay.
also is a company called Legacy Box, I believe,
Oh yeah.
that will take all of these digital files, take all these non-digital files and we'll convert them into digital files. So, yeah, you could do that. But definitely see what the Memory Depot has first.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
Legacy Box might be or you might just, I mean, I don't know, like I, there's what's this? It's it's not free share. It's like Craigslist, but it's free. And so free cycle, you can
Yeah.
borrow from other people. Like you can borrow like there someone might have a camcorder to wave
Janet, do you
file.
still have the machine that you used to do the recording?
I think so.
Maybe down the basement somewhere is usually my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be a
Yeah.
way to take that and have a separate
If you've
device
still
that's
got the
in.
machine, there's usually a way to get it out of it.
To play it with a cable attached to your
Yes.
computer that somehow
Yeah,
records it while you're playing
yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah. That you'll definitely
Another
check.
option, I have used Dig My Pics,
What is
meaning
it?
digitize, DIGMYPIX. And I had a lot of 35 millimeter slides because that was a thing back when I was younger. They'd recently invented film then. But at any rate, they did a grand job for me. They were,
Okay.
and there are others. I'm not saying they're better or worse than anybody else, but there are several services that will digitize things. And finally, if you do need a VCR, I believe it or not, I have one. So
I might be borrowing one.
we can talk.
Okay. Linda, and then I see Leslie has a question in the chat, but Linda first.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. My question is, I have multiple letters from my uncle who died during World War II that he had written home to his father. So the way that I have these, because I occasionally show them to family members, is I have, and these are multiple page letters typically written on stationery that was provided to him at the Naval Air Station he was serving at or training at. So what I've done is I've taken the pages and I'll put two pages in one archival plastic folder with back to back. They're only written on one side.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not recommended that I put them back to back, or should I be separating them with
So,
the,
right, the interleaving tissue,
yeah,
minimally put interleaving tissue in between. So if you're going to have two pieces of paper inside a plastic sleeve, right, you're going to want to always make sure that there's at least one of the sleeve, right? There's at least one edge that's completely open to air to let acid get out. But
Okay.
right, so minimally. So, but definitely, since you're going to have one page on one side, one page on the other side, I would put down a piece of interleaving tissue in the middle
Uh-huh.
because it'll absorb any extra acid. If it has any moisture in there, it's going to absorb it before the piece of paper will.
Okay.
But the great thing you said is it's an archival sleeve. It's not like it's not a Staples PVC sleeve, right? It's an archival sleeve.
Well, I am going to double check on that. I thought I'd bought archival sleeves, but
Check.
yeah, I
Definitely
hope
check.
that's
But
what it
yeah.
is.
And yeah, definitely. But that sounds like, yeah, as long as it's an archival sleeve, the only thing I think you should do if you don't want to have each letter in its own envelope, definitely put a piece of interleaving tissue in the middle of there to absorb any acid.
Okay. One other quick question. So I also have quite a few black and white negatives from the same era. And they're not, because they're not 35 millimeter, they're not like standard, they may be standard size, I don't know, but how should I be saving those? Right now, they're, my dad had put them, organized them by, I think, some kind of location or activity that was going on, and they're in a small paper folders, little teeny ones, the size of the negatives.
So as long as they're in, if they're in a plastic, if they're in plastic sections and plastic sleeves or something like that, right? Are they in?
No, they're in a paper, little kind of miniature paper folders that are
Oh,
just
yeah.
slightly larger than the negative size.
Right, I have those too. That paper is starting to fall apart, so I think you should get it out of that paper. That paper probably has acid in it or something like that. It's definitely not archival. So you're going to want to take those negatives out. If you can find negative sleeves that are roughly the same size,
Okay.
I would put them in those, right? And then put those sleeves in a folder, in a box,
Okay.
or in a folder in a box. And if you can't find
Yeah, I'll have
plastic,
to do a little bit of research to
yeah,
see if
do a
I
little
can
research.
find.
But
Yeah.
you're gonna the important part is you don't want the negatives to be moving around and potentially getting scratched with whatever they're moving around in. So you're trying to immobilize them so that basically all this stuff, by the way, when that's paper, when that's a photograph, when it's a negative, whatever, whatever it is, you want to try to immobilize it so that it's not moving and scratching it, itself and other things. So you're going to want to try to find a sleeve if you can that fits it to your best ability, and then store it away from light and dust.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I see Leslie Anderson. I have a Bible published in the late 1880s. Awesome for you. The owner, my great-great-grandfather, served in the little cavalry, signed his name in pencil. It's fading. What do I do? Entries written in ink are legible. Okay, so the first things first is don't ever clean it, with this guy, right? Because pencil will be erased with this guy. First things first, document it, right? Take a scan of it somehow, take a high quality photograph of it somehow. But it's probably fading because of two things. One, it's either been exposed to light, and so you're going to want to make sure that you put it in a box and keep it away from light. Or two, it's being whatever is happening is being rubbed, right? So if it's on a piece of paper and someone's constantly opening it and closing it, it's rubbing. So what I would do is, again, interleaving tissue sounds like it's like the savior of everything, and it kind of is. You're going to want to cut some interleaving tissue the same size as the Bible where the information is, so that when you put that down, because it's interleaving tissue is softer than regular paper. So, but most likely it's fading because either light or rubbing. It's been rubbed. And then you're just going to want to you're going to want to not open it and close it all the time. So take a photograph of it so that if you ever want to see it, you're going to look at a photograph and not the actual object. And then try to put it in a box for storage away from sunlight. I don't know if that answered your question, Leslie, but there it is. And if you have a follow-up, you can let me know. Any other questions? And as a plug, the archive SIG is brand new. We've been meeting for 3 months. Our thought process is we meet online, we meet Zoom 1 month, and then we meet in person the second and third month, and we do exactly some of the things that we've been talking about. We've only had 2 months in person, and I've gotten more done in those 2 months in person than I've gotten done all year. And yeah, it's a bit of a schlub to like grab some stuff and like go to the library, but I got a whole office full of stuff, and I somehow don't make it down here to archive. So definitely plug for the archive SIG. We meet on the fourth Tuesday of each month, and the schedule is on the events calendar. So if there are no other questions, oh, I see Leslie. Thank you. It's one of those Bibles that's 6 inches thick. I scanned relevant pages years ago, donated the images, keeping the Bible for now. Yeah. So just put it in a box is protected with some tissue so it's not moving around. And it sounds like you're doing the best you can. But maybe put down a piece of interleaving tissue on the pencil so that it's not moving around a lot. Marlene looked like she had a question, and then they went down. So no question.
Come back up here.
There she
Yeah.
is. I hear her.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about yesterday in the African American SIG, we did Family Tree Maker. And one of the things that Family Tree Maker has is Tree Vault. So a lot of the things you can save in Tree Vault, and then they can be retrieved by whomever you designate to take over your work. So it'll all be put together in a file for you. And they can keep updating
Okay.
if there are changes in
That's
formats.
good. Yeah, because also I think Ancestry, you can designate kind of an executor, so to speak, on Ancestry, I believe. So you should definitely do that too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good. All right. So yeah, it went long, but I warned you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Very much. I wanted to point out that I just put in a link in the chat for feedback. So please do fill out feedback if you can in the by clicking on that link in the tab. Just in the chat, excuse me. I should be able to get to that page without any problem at all. And yeah, it's really helpful for us to be able to evaluate programs and to understand what type of information to bring to our for our programming at FXGS if you fill out those forms. So please do that. And that's what I have.
I don't see the form.
It's in the chat. There's a link.
In the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at chat.
At the bottom.
Who can see the messages?
Nathan says, please provide feedback, and gives a link. I see it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send it out in an email as well. But thank you very much. And thank you very much to Michele. Really, really appreciate it.
Yes.
There's so much
Yes,
information.
thank you.
This is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Start saving
yeah.
away.
I'll hand it back to Art for any last words.
There will be very few last words other than please join us on Saturday. You're going to have a great time if you do. And I also have to say a special thank you to Michele. It was a jam-packed presentation with lots of good stuff. And the handout/handbook or whatever is going to be extremely valuable. I found myself saying, I need to find supplies. Where do I find them? Well, there's links in that handbook.
And I'm not affiliated with Gaylord, by the way, but they had a 25% Black Friday sale. And then because of the America 250, I think they're having like a 20% discount the entire year. So definitely take a look at Gaylord. There's other ones as well. And I did check, by the way, they didn't inflate their prices and just to give everyone a discount. Like it's actual 20% discount. So definitely take a look. But yeah, in the handout/booklet, there are resources.
So thank you again. And I look forward to seeing everybody on Saturday.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.